Roses are red and the light from the phone is blue. And the vampires are delighted every time they get invited in the room. Money isn't green, it's as mean as the day is long. And before you even notice, everything you've ever known and loved is gone. Nothing stays that's golden. I've been holding on to home for so long. And yellow is the sun that used to shine outside my window frame. Shit. And heavy and heavy. Sorry, I forgot the lyrics. It's okay. It's a good instrumental though. Too new. Too new. I love that first line of that. Roses are red and the light of the phone is blue. Like that's blue really, light.
Yeah, that's really great.
And the vampires are delighted every time they are invited in the room, which is like...
You're inviting the, like, by using the phone.
Kind of, yeah, like, you know, you're subjecting yourself to the dopamine rush and everybody's on their phone and being manipulated by the blue light, and like you have to kind of invite the vampire in order for it to be in. It's like you have to kind of like you voluntarily give your time and attention to the election, politics, all the fake world that's basically being distributed to you from the blue light. Yeah. It's for a good first line, man. Exactly, man. Exactly. Non-violent, non-cooperation, man. You know that's the fucking key. Natural law. Still gotta work on like a chord part though, like a bridge or like. Bluesy, so you can have just different vibes.
You're gonna have some vibes, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
No masters, no slaves, no rulers, no state, no taxes, no cage. To see it is to leave it.
Voluntaryist Academy is an educational platform dedicated to the principles of non-aggression, self-ownership, and the ethical philosophy of voluntarism. Here, we reject the mythology of political authority and embrace the timeless truth that all human interaction should be grounded in consent and moral integrity. Through rigorous study, in-depth courses, and accessible materials, Voluntaryist Academy equips individuals with tools to critically examine the foundations of coercive systems and replace them with voluntary, peaceful alternatives rooted in natural law. So whether you are new to these ideas or looking to deepen your understanding, Voluntaryist Academy provides a structured path to intellectual freedom, ethical consistency, and personal sovereignty. Welcome. Explore the curriculum, challenge false assumptions, learn to live free. I'm James Quarterner, streaming live every Saturday night. For all of you people listening on other platforms, we're live on YouTube every Saturday night. Come on over, enjoy a live stream, relax into some new information, or keep listening to the replays. It's your choice. You can find replays on, of course, on YouTube and on Rumble. Should the YouTube ever go down, you can go to Rumble, and Jonna has been working behind the scenes to make sure that the Rumble channel is all caught up. Trying to catch up on Spotify as well. Got a lot of work to do behind the scenes here to make sure that everything is the way that it is supposed to be. And so, yeah, we're doing everything that we can. There's some new formatting going on. There's a new logo. If you look right up there, there's a reformatted logo. Very happy about that. Kind of did that randomly this morning. Anyways, before I get too off track, tonight we're going to be talking with Chris Jantzen from the End Evil podcast, and you can find him on YouTube as well at the End Evil podcast. And his whole podcast was based off of this book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, that we've gone over in previous weeks and kind of took a deep dive into this work. So I invited him on to have a conversation. Chris and I go way back, and I'm pretty excited to present that conversation with you guys tonight. Although it will be streamed live, the conversation isn't happening live. So if you want to jump in the chat and ask some questions or whatever, I'll do my best to accommodate you and to answer your questions. But first, I want to direct you all over to the voluntaristacademy.com, which is my website, where you can check out some past work, search around, and find other resources that you can take home with you, such as PDFs of the material that I cover on this channel. And you can sign up to the newsletter and stay in touch. Should anything happen, should anything happen to this channel, you're going to want to be on the newsletter, so you can hear from me and make sure that you can stay in touch. You can become a sponsor. But really the best way that you can support this show at this point in the game is to make sure that more people are seeing it. So, do everything for the algorithm. Do it for the algorithm, guys. Drop a comment on the video and, give it a thumbs up, share it around, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. It shows the algorithm that we have to kind of, unfortunately, bend a little bit of a knee to get this information out to a wider audience. We have to show the algorithm that people are liking it and that people are watching it. So I kindly ask you to consider doing that for me. And if you want to take a step forward, further, You can become a sponsor for $3 a month. You can help support, keeping up with the hosting fees and everything for the website. And if I can, come up with enough people to support this endeavor in a monetarily fashioned way, then I can perhaps stream live on multiple platforms as well. What you get is, a Discord server in return where you can chat with everybody else that's a part of this community that we're trying to build, because, community is a pretty important thing where we can discuss solutions and kind of take a solutions-based approach to all of the world's problems from a anarchist, voluntarist perspective. And also, should there be enough traction gained in this community, we will be able to have bi-weekly meetings where we can hang out and get to know each other, and that'll be fun. So if you go over to getautonomy.info, season 15 of Autonomy, Richard Grove's course is starting up, and you can go over to getautonomy.info to learn more, to see if it's right for you. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle missing from life that unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of people relied on public education to kind of set them on a path, and they leave out a bunch of stuff. Richard, in his course, he helps people fill in those missing pieces and find out what they want to bring to the market, and possibly break free from a scarcity mindset into one of an abundance, a mindset of abundance. And so you can come over here and check it out more, and, and see if it's right for you. And should you enroll, tell them James Cordiner sent you, and that'll help me out tremendously. Go over to the One Great Work Network at onegreatworknetwork.com and find, including Chris Jantzen, who's on tonight's show, among many other people who I've interviewed over the years, because this group of people, they're working tirelessly to create content and use the technology that's available to us to our benefit, and to communicate out into the world the ideas of natural law and freedom in many different ways. So you go over here to onegreatworknetwork.com, and you can find so many more people than just yours truly, who are trying to, again, take a solutions-based approach to helping the world solve its own problems. So, and, ending slavery one mind at a time is the motto over there at the One Great Work Network. And yeah, so anyways, I'm working on a supercut of The End of All Evil, and that'll be available pretty soon, probably within the week. And, and we're just tweaking some things on the channel to make it a little more, I don't know, a little more, I don't know what we're really trying to do is make it more aesthetically pleasing and make it more accessible to people, and to get the message out to a wider audience. And so anyways, if you're listening to the replay over on Spotify or Rumble, keep in mind that we are live streaming on YouTube on Saturday nights at around 9 p.m., 9:15 at the latest is when the streams start. And yeah, so I'm really happy to bring this to you guys. Next week will probably be another interview. And then after that, we're going to get into the Agorist Primer, which is behind me, stage right. And we're going to dive into Samuel Edward Konkin's the third, his work on counter-economics. And we're going to see what that's all about. Hence the change up of the logo over here, up here. And so, yeah, it's high time we dive deeper into some economic stuff. So without any further ado, let me click over here and we'll speak to Chris Jantzen for the next hour. The End of All Evil. So, yeah, man. Okay. So as promised, I'm here with Chris Jantzen of the End Evil podcast. And I'm excited because it's been a while since Chris Jantzen and I have had a one-on-one conversation, and we go back quite a little ways in our podcasting and content creation adventure. We've been friends for probably about 5 years now, I'd say. And man, am I excited to be friends with this guy. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Jantzen. The crowd
Thanks,
goes
James.
wild.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, calm down, you know. I'll be here for the next hour. No, just kidding. No, it's good to see you, man. You always feel like an old friend, and it is, you know, it's hard to find people that want to talk about morality. It's hard to find people that want to talk about books like The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. And what else is worth talking about, really, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things, but it all seems to hover around that the center target there, which is, you know, this kind of inert, this kind of like resting feeling that everyone, I think, has deep down in the subconscious, maybe in different levels and sort of a spectrum type of way. Of maybe more people are aware of it now, or less aware of it in some way, shape, or form, like a volume knob being turned up and down. But I'd say that most people have this feeling that, you know, this uneasy feeling that something's just wrong out there, and they just can't quite place their, you know, finger on it. Like they, you know, and so they're hovering over that bullseye, and it's just like, oh, just land the ship already, land it right there, and let's start talking about morality and start talking about natural law, because that's the missing piece of the puzzle. I think most people can't place.
Yeah, we're looking for a paradigm shift. And I had a moment just the other day where I just kind of stopped and actually questioned reality itself. And it's like, what is this? You know, what is this? And it's like, you can do that as many times as you want in life, and there's always the ability to get a fresh revelation. You know, and revelation's a great word because it's inherent in this reality that there's a continual ability to realize things. And reality only exists in the exact moment that we're in. And so there's this constant abundance of opportunities to realize and discover truths.
What was it that you discovered this time when you had that moment?
It's not specific. You know, that was what was so cool about it. It wasn't a specific, it was just kind of like the realization that, whoa, you know, this is intense. What we're living, like what happens after this? What happens before? All those questions we've asked when we were little kids, and then we forget to keep asking with excitement, right? I think we do forget to be excited about these things because the humdrum of the reality around us is so materialistic and power driven. You know, talk about the book, right? That's a lot what Jeremy's talking about in this book, is that it's not money, you know, that is the ultimate evil, you know, and it's not fear either. That's what a lot of people want to think. When you ask what is evil, and you know, it's not, you know, it's power, you know.
It's an interesting takeaway. So for the record, in case I didn't mention it in the live intro that you guys just were shifted over here from, we're going to talk about The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, which Chris's podcast is largely based around, hence the name End Evil. And so power, that's an interesting takeaway, because the takeaway that I'm getting is that the ultimate evil is culture. What do you think about that?
That's one way to put it. The culture of authority, right? The belief in authority is kind of the way we've put it from, you know, people that have studied Mark Passio's work. You know, that's kind of like another way to say it, the ultimate evil, the belief in authority. But, you know, it was just kind of reading through Jeremy Locke's way of putting it. He has a little different spin in some ways, how he puts things. And I was thinking about how he's saying it's like, it's not money. You know, money's not the evil. Well, I think it was a particular. Let me give you the exact quote that I was reading that got me saying that. He said, "An important principle to understand is that evil wants power over you. money is only a representation of work. And as long as evil people can compel you to work on their behalf, they don't need to possess money to control you. This principle is exercised in welfare and socialist states. Money confiscated by politicians is largely not spent directly on themselves. However, they still enjoy the taste of power over you by taking and spending that which they did not earn. It is not money that is evil, but slavery. So, right, slavery is ultimately evil, trying to own another being. But that's power, right? The craving to have that power over people is what drives this belief in authority and these authority mongers, right?
Yeah, they have to, and you know, to I guess tie both of our points. You're doing a brilliant job doing that for me, but they have to, those who want that power have to figure out a way to disseminate a culture downstream to the people, quote unquote people, that they're trying to have that power over, in order for those people to believe in the authority that they're trying to possess. Is that right?
It did blow me away when I first read his book, the thing about culture. I mean, I don't know if you were shocked as I was, but I always thought of culture as a good thing until I got deep into Jeremy Locke's book, and he starts talking about cultural as a bad thing. And I think anybody listening, if they haven't been with you through that whole book, they would probably be kind of shocked too that you're talking about the world culture as a bad thing, right?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you that it's unsettling. You know, it's very unsettling when you run across Locke's take on culture, because you would think that, you know, this is what makes us kind of lively, and it gives us kind of, you know, a community, and but it's ultimately what he's pointing out in my assessment is culture is the driving force of collectivism, and it's going to rip away your individuality as a result. And without individuality, you really can't have liberty, because freedoms and rights and liberties, however which way you'd like to refer to these inherent entitlements that we have from the creator, are tied to an individual and not a collective or a group. So culture is being the driving force behind that group. Yeah, that's my assessment on that. And it was very unsettling, but you know, in this kind of turn of the new century and the new millennia, whatever the hell it is, and there's been a lot of talk about culture in more recent years, cultural appropriation and all of these things. And when I'm reading this book and I'm thinking about all of this so this book helped me really dial in this phrase that I think I coined, which is intergenerational cultural conditioning. And what I mean by that is just as it sounds, but I'll spell it out for anybody out there. It's all about control. The conditioning is about control, but through culture, over the course of many generations, they're able to condition people into kind of being a certain way that is preferable to the ruling class. And I guess to wrap up my point here, and you know, pass it back to you, Chris, is all of this talk about this politically correctness, all of the control of speech that's been going on, which is aptly pointed out in Locke's writing in the book, is that, you know, the control of speech is also like a part of the destruction of freedom. But the cultural appropriation and all of these I guess different months of the year where different cultures are being celebrated, even if they're kind of filled with, you know, maybe some hedonistic tendencies, whether you know what I'm talking about or not. I don't really care. But anyways, seems to me to be again disseminated down to the people from the ruling class to make them more controllable. Because if we're separated into all of these cultures, then, I mean, and I know I'm talking about individual liberty and individuality here as kind of an overarching like message and umbrella that like I kind of stuff everything else under. But when you have all these separate cultures, you're forgetting that we're all human, and that the real culture should be one of like freedom and liberty and natural law and morality. And so when you're like separating all that out, now you have all these different groups like pawns on a chessboard that you can move around and pit against each other, you know, and it becomes easier and easier over time. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of went with that one. Thank you for giving me
What was your
time.
term? Intergenerational?
Intergenerational cultural conditioning.
Yeah. ICC. Intergenerational cultural conditioning. I like that. I thought about in some of my work, when you think about over generations, there is an intergenerational power. Like how, we've talked about a power differential, right? When someone has more knowledge. Imagine if you lived on a certain area of land for 3 or 4 generations. Now you have a higher level of knowledge and understanding of maybe the plants, the animals, the environment, when it rains, all these type of things. So if someone were to invade you and you've been living on this land for multiple generations, you have a certain power they don't have because all this knowledge, right? And so when that gets stripped away from people, they lose a certain amount of power. And the trouble with culture is that there's a difference between culturing our future ourselves or being cultured. And I think that's what really the important distinction, because like when you look back at the word culture, etymologically speaking, it means very similar as cultivate. It comes from like colere, or what's the other word? Cultura, right? And to till the land, right? And so, if we're cultivating a future of, I've imagined a artistic renaissance of sorts, where we put all our emphasis and energy into creating things and expressing ourselves artistically, right? That would be a beautiful thing. We could create a renaissance which would bring an abundance to everyone involved through the trade, the commerce, the sharing of energy, right? However, we live in a world where that's constantly being monopolized by authoritarian regime or some sort of control, coercion type control. And under the thumb of that type of world, it's like people are being cultured, almost like pigs in a pen, right? And that's a bad thing. And that's not to say that art doesn't, and beautiful things don't still blossom within that we appreciate. Like different communities, they cook certain foods that have a smell and spices, and certain types of dances, and these things that have developed and that we call culture. And there's a lot of aspects of that we do want to appreciate. But that just goes to show that freedom still wants to flourish even in the land of tyranny. Even when you have the boot on your neck, humanity, life itself, still wants to do beautiful things and appreciate its moments and relate to other beings and create this generational power. It's inherently built into us to want to thrive and appreciate our time. So I think a lot of the things that we appreciate that we call culture are the best aspects of being cultured. Us trying to express, think about all blues. Blues led to a lot of the hard rock that we have today, right? If you date it back, a lot of rock music came from blues. And the original blues came from slaves, getting beaten down and swinging a hammer and saying, swing a hammer, swing a hoe, swing a hammer, swing a hoe. And then coming up with these blues riffs on like making up instruments out of, random things that they found, right? And a lot of that passion was coming out of people trying to fire up freedom for the future, right? And so the heart of music itself is the love and care for freedom and the expression of freedom in the moment. And so that's what we want to encourage going forward and ignite. But so culture is a tricky thing. If you're not doing it, if you're not the one doing the cultivating, then you're getting cultivated.
It's about, I guess, would you agree that it's about maybe keeping yourself in check in a moral sense then? Um, so that way you're not allowing a culture to kind of go and make you do something to maybe somebody who isn't a part of your culture. So your neighboring tribe or your neighbor doesn't like the same things as you and doesn't like the same foods or the same music, and I guess it's about morality at that point, huh? And
Well, right. And then is that universal or is that following the laws of the land? Like you were starting to allude to, we might have things like Christmas or Easter, like these holidays, right? And you spend times with families, and certain songs are played, and it all goes together with this emotional pull, and a lot of times religions get tied in, and then
right,
authoritarian structures also get tied in. Saluting and wearing the flag and certain holidays, marching around and wearing certain costumes, right? And in some ways, we want to introduce a way where communities get together and have cultural ties, right? But modern, being that the modern culture is driven by an authoritarian belief, an overarching authoritarian belief, it's constantly trampling all over what the essence of freedom is, which is that each of us can choose, right? That's ultimately, when you really boil it down, that's what reality is. It's an opportunity for us to choose, right? Every moment we can choose. You can move your hands, you can move your lips and make sounds come out. You can affect the environment around you. And that's granted to us, however, wherever, by being born here, right? And that's what we call inherent and built in, right? We have this freedom. And so all these made up things by humans, on books and paper, and people practicing over and over, we're going to follow all these certain things, and you need to stand in this line or salute at this time. That's all, how evil is it relatively is depending on how much freedom it's stomping down. That for me is why Jeremy Locke and the End Evil podcast really came together, because I needed a way to discern, okay, what is evil? How do we examine evil in a way that we can all talk about objectively? And he says it point blank: evil is the destruction of freedom. And it's really like, boom, for me, that makes so much sense. When you think about it, how do you judge any given situation if you don't have a judge and a jury and all this structure we have in place, and you have to discern whether something's evil or not? Well, how much is freedom being destroyed? Is it being destroyed for multiple people? Is one person losing all their freedom? Like, how much freedom's being destroyed is how much evil is being propagated into the world. And I think that's a really simple way to think about it and to compare things.
yeah, I guess it could, if you tried really hard, you could probably complicate that. Uh the Actually, it'd probably be pretty easy to complicate that, because you want the whole saying of one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. So who's really, so it's really difficult. It's really difficult to really discern between, the aggressor and the one on the defense, when you weren't there to see who started the fight. However, um, I guess where I'm going with this is that it's it's pretty easy to see when maybe one side is going a little too far. I don't know what I'm trying to get at here, but um yeah,
I mean,
it
some
is
things anybody could see from a huge distance, like the abuse of children, right? Like, how
sure.
obvious could evil be as that, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't matter what planet you're born on, what country you're born on, or what age you are. I think there's sort of an inherent realization, like something like humans eating other humans, like, whoa, wait a second here. That just doesn't seem right on a very deep level, right? And I'm assuming that is across the board. I could be wrong, and there could be a such thing as inherent psychopathic things that are born onto this realm that don't feel that at all. I kind of don't think that's the case myself, but it could be, you know. But that's definitely not true for the mass of conscious individuals. And I think kind of the definition of being conscious, right? How close those words are, conscious and conscience, is that you have the ability to have conscience. And that's exactly what the spark or the spirit of life is conscience. And that's what reality is in its purest sense, is moral choice. That's what I tend to think. And that's, to me, it explains a lot of things that, you know, like other people are mystified by on this, like when they do these, double slit experiment or talk about, you know, this level of things. I get back to this spiritual world. I'm like, yeah, it represents a choice. Every moment has a choice, and you affect reality in that moment when you choose. If you think about reality as just a balance of evil and good and natural law, and you put in something that adds evil to it and takes away choice for yourself or others, it tilts the scale just that much and changes everything just that much, right? In that exact, not a nanosecond, you know, just exactly. Like, you know, reality's just, it's not favoritism. It's not some personality that likes these people and not these people. No, it's just exact every time. It goes into the code of what is from there on is consequence. That's what we're experiencing, is the consequences of what everybody did right up to this moment in moral choices. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, but every moment from now into the future is an opportunity to learn and use that conscience, because the curiosity, and we're using a lot of C words, the alliteration is insane. The curiosity.
Don't be critical of the curiosity.
Come on. Talking about culture.
Talking to Chris here.
Talking to Chris about culture and curiosity and conscience and consciousness and critical thinking.
Character.
And outcomes and character. So curiosity being like a driving factor behind behind conscience, the discovery of right and wrong, the application of it, knowing the difference between right and wrong, then making the choice to perform right action over wrong action. And that is tied in directly, like you're saying, with consciousness, you know, the awareness of the world around you. And I mean, those kind of, it creates like this cycle to, you know, kind of repeat right action, knowing that it'll actually have a better outcome due to that awareness of the world around you and the effect that you choose to want to have on it. And if we take all the, like what you're saying, all of the things, the cause and effect, well, the present moment is the effect of all the past cause. And so, I mean, that's how I see it sometimes. But it's down to choice, you know, it's really down to choice. And just to touch upon like culture again, and just to wrap it up, I don't know if we really got to this point, but like, I just wanted to say that, you know, me personally, I don't really have any problem with culture, with people and their specific cultures. I have a problem with immorality, and I have a problem with people just kind of being sheep and going along with like a program that's being put in front of them to follow. And that I just question, where did you get your culture from? Was it a benevolent force that brought this culture to you, or was it something more nefarious? And is it about control? That's the only question there before anyone out there is like, this guy's a bigot or whatever that people want to call white people these days, because somebody might, with the wrong skin color, might want to question the need for culture out there, you know. So yeah, it is, this is an exercise of free speech. And like I said earlier in the book, like if you're offended by speech, that's like, that's on you, man.
Yeah, then what are you going to do when you got something you want to talk about, right? You should expect people are going to be offended by in return, right? You know.
Yeah, I mean,
we have
he
to
touches
expect
upon
what
that.
we want for others, right? Golden rule type stuff.
Right. I mean, that's the ultimate way to discover truth, is, you know, speech, and its speech's purpose is to identify things in the world. And
I thought of a good allegorical story. I think if I hadn't have done the End Evil podcast, I might have done Man's Search for Meaning podcast. because like one of the next books on my list that I like to talk about a lot, other than Jeremy Locke's book and my book, is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It just really sticks in my head so often of the situation he describes in a concentration camp, where you can imagine the type of thing where you got 5 guys, skinny, barely fed, in some sort of tent living situation, digging around in the dirt, trying to get enough tobacco together to roll their nightly cigarette before they go to bed. Maybe we're going to live to see another day tomorrow. And we all have a little, you can imagine the ones that survived years later, remembering those good old days, when we had to do that. Right. And, like the culture of the camp at that time would have been, even in that terrible place where people have guns all around ready to shoot you, and you're seeing your fellow human beings dying around you, and you're in the worst conditions of all, you would still, within those of you that were alive, you would seek to create some sort of what we would call culture, right? Like the cigarette at night ceremony,
it's like a ritual,
or the we clean each other's shoes before we go to bed to remind ourselves we're still human or something. They had little things they would do, and of course you would think of those things fondly and cherish. That's kind of what we're talking about here. It's not saying that the culture of the nightly cigarette or the cleaning each other's dusty shoes was a good thing. It was terrible that we were in Nazi concentration camp, right? But that's terrible, slavery, being in slavery. And that's not recognizing that that's the situation that we're experiencing is the really problematic thing that we got going on in today's world, because a lot of us are spoiled to an extent, right? Like we have everything, all the food we could ever eat, which is most of humankind, that's never been a thing. People have fought with slavery, hunger on a day-to-day basis through a lot of history and a lot of different places in the world. People are just trying to get food. You know what I mean? And we live in a place where there's this abundance of, you can get food, that's not a problem. And in fact, a lot of times people have so much time that they're spending their whole life just in front of these screens, playing games and talking about nonsense, like they say, soft times make soft people, right? And so a lot of us haven't experienced any kind of like real, but then on the other hand, you have a huge percentage of society that don't even have houses and that are scrounging in garbage cans to make it through the day and collecting cans, right? We have all these different extreme aspects around us in our society, but most of the people that we know and talk to haven't really felt the snap of the whip. They haven't had to smoke that cigarette before bed knowing that, they're going to be in work camp tomorrow. So it's like the slavery isn't palpable enough for most people to recognize it for what it is, I think.
Well, one could argue that the slavery is been perfected, or it's close to being perfected.
Yeah, that's the way Locke puts it, right?
So it is, what do I say? The food is largely poisonous. The world is abundant, but what we're given is what George Carlin would have said, did say in one of his acts, the illusion of choice. You get 32 different flavors of bagels, but you only get 2 political parties. You don't have a choice. You go to the grocery store, all these food companies, they're all like Monsanto's spraying, Roundup. Is it Roundup that Monsanto has that they're spraying on crops, and they spray it in the air, and then the non-GMO field next door, the wind blows the fucking Roundup over there, and now the organic food has it on there, and they can still sell it as organic food because the farmer of that farm didn't intentionally put it on the. So it's really difficult to really believe in. We do have a lot of food. Like, that is a very good point. And wars were fought over food. So I mean, and we don't have to fight those types of wars anymore, at least not in this country. But um, we're still living under a very tyrannical, authoritarian regime who is working their way to perfecting slavery, and we need to be very aware of that. And so, and there's a lot of people out there, not to push back on everything that you said, Chris, but there's a lot of people out there that even today would identify and relate in maybe a much less intense way to the scrounging up some scraps of tobacco to roll a cigarette to smoke with a few other prisoners at the end of the night, trying to sneak away from where the guards can see you. I personally have been in that situation, by the way. I was in jail at one point in my life, and we had to sneak cigarettes where the guards couldn't see us. And it was a little bit of fun. It felt like you're hiding. I was just a young kid. I didn't understand until they shook down my cell and found little scraps of paper and tried to make my living situation, if you want to even call it that. They tried to make it worse because I had scraps of paper in my foot locker that I was using as bookmarks, and they were trying to tell me that I was rolling cigarettes, which I was, but they couldn't really pin it on me. So they're looking for anything they could. And in that moment, I suddenly, it was one of those moments where it's like when you're in that situation, when even though it was only for a short while, when every decision that you make is dictated to you, when you can't decide when you want to eat, you can't decide when you want to shower, you can't decide when you want to sleep, you can't decide when you want to work, you can't decide what clothes you want to wear, you can't decide what basically almost anything. Pretty much the only decision that's left up to you is the hairstyle that you choose to wear. That is something that I've experienced in my life, and it drives me forward to kind of keep fighting for more freedom. Not to say certain people that commit heinous crimes shouldn't maybe have to pay a price for that. I don't know what that price looks like. Most of the time it's restitution to the injured party, and other times it's kind of retaliation to get the scumbag out of the community. But I digress from that point and just say that there are many, including myself, on a much, much, much smaller scale, because we weren't being genocided and put to firing squads and starved to death, even though you might as well have been starved to death with the nutritional quality of the food that they were giving us. And it was probably easier to not eat that than, anyways, I've been in those shoes where you can't make any decisions for yourself. And it's like, whoa, that's what's going on to innocent people every day. And it really upsets me. For a young people out there getting, well, maybe not today so much as it was back in, the early 2000s, getting caught with or even before then, getting caught with cannabis, getting fucking locked up for a plant, that's not hurting anybody. So the whole point being is that I think that maybe some of the ideas of how easy we got it is there to just pacify the large population of people into a lulled state, so that they won't push back against the increased tyranny that is actually really happening. And it's like the slow march to perfected slavery, this Fabian socialist tactic of incremental pushing the ball down the field type of stuff that we don't see because of the comforts and luxuries and all this niceties and stuff like that we have, at least in a supposedly developed country such as America, when in fact it's really I guess
the facade, right?
Yeah.
I remember knowing these people, and they had a little Pomeranian dog, and they'd carry it around in this little purse, right? Like into restaurants, everywhere. Sneak this little puppy around, right? And then we were thinking to myself, this little dog just constantly getting fed little pieces of fancy meat and getting carried around in a purse, with its tiny little legs. It had already been bred, which makes me wonder the way people breed animals sometimes, how moral that is, but it's like it's kind of the perfect symbol of where we're at. You know, we've been bred to perfection where we've kind of lose the ability to use our own feet because we've been carried around in a purse for so long, you know, and fed scraps of meat. When you allow yourself to be that cultured, you lose the ability to grow your own food and walk 10 miles or read a whole book, you know, because you've been spoon fed your whole life information and told that, hey, you already know, you know, we already got this stuff figured out. Just do what we're saying. You know, where I feel like day one, early on in any type of educational program that we were to start to create for our children in our community or our own children, would have to start with number one, you know, what's okay and what's not okay. How do we get along with others in a way that makes sense, right? Ground one, morality type of stuff.
Right.
And then like right after that, I feel like we need to have a really, really long, important lesson about beliefs and what are beliefs and imagination and when is it appropriate to use it and when is it not. Because, you know, beliefs and imagination are beautiful, wonderful things, but can also be the most dangerous things in the world. You know, I think of a belief is the belief in authority is the vehicle for destruction of freedom, right? You know, so we need to deal with that like first thing with kids, and that's not happening in today's world at all. The opposite is happening. We're glossing over that stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's I have a huge problem with parents of young kids these days not focusing in on that, and it rubs up against my own my own understanding of morality and my own understanding of, I guess, freedom. And like I don't know how much I should be saying to these people if it's really any of my business, you know. And I see, like, you know, man, it's tough to talk about. I used to be a lot more just kind of, you know, flippant about it, about the parents sending their kids to government school. But I understand now, as more time has gone on, just how difficult that choice is to make and how difficult it is to keep up homeschooling and to, you know, the strain it puts because of again, like this intergenerational culture of sending your children off to that place. It can be pretty difficult to break free of that, but it's really important to take that step and to be strong about it. And that's what we've chosen to do over here. It's just I don't know, I want to tell everybody, like, stop sending them there. Like, see all the problems in the world, see all the children being blown up in the Middle East. Like, there's millions of files that are being released out there that are proving that government officials are pedophiles and they're eating kids. And like, it's like, I mean, and then you're going to turn around and believe that these people have our best interest at heart and that you want to vote for them more and that you just believe in the system and everything like that. The same system that keeps like fucking you over every goddamn year of your life. And they just keep taking from you and taking and taking and taking. And you can't just like see it. It's right there in front of you, but you'd rather go and watch a football game and get drunk and waste your time and be a lazy, you know, POS and not actually do something about this in a more peaceful way than like actually like taking a fight to them.
Vote
like
harder.
They got us beat on the whole, like, if you wanted to take a fight to them, I think they got us beat. I'm not sure, but I know that there's a more philosophical way to fight them. And it's to say no, thank you, please, to the things that they offer. And it starts there, you know, and that I think is a fact. And that includes saying no, thank you, please, to their offer of educating your children. And that's the first step. And I'm so glad that you brought up what you brought up about.
For me, school,
about that, yeah.
I had bad dreams about it years afterward. I really had an aversion to a lot of things that went on there. And I didn't understand as I was going through it what I was getting upset with and triggered by so often. But now looking back, I totally understand it. I think I had kind of a basic understanding of my sovereignty, even at a young age, that I
Yeah.
didn't know how to verbalize. But
Well,
I
I
knew
think
that these people had no right to be
yeah.
talking to me the way they were. And I knew that their ultimate goal was not to teach me, help educate me, because if it was, all the rules and laws and stuff they did wouldn't have been on how to punish me for not following their rules, because that was always the game. And I was aware of that. And I didn't know how to say it back then, but the game was always get in line or else. Do as I say or else. Don't stand up when we say don't stand up. Sit down when we say sit down. Hold your hand up when we, you know what I mean? It was always about following the rules, way more than it was ever about here's what you really need to know to help you be a better individual in life, right? Because I know that. I think I knew that looking back deep down because I was already curious about how to become a better individual in life. You know, some awesome things my dad said when I was young set me off on a journey towards how do I become an awakened, aware, Buddha-like, Jesus-like, you know, entity in this world. I want to awaken and become alive, you know. And so I was already on that path from a young age. And so being dampened in that way just felt like, and so I got kicked out of a lot of classes. And I got mad and bitter in there a lot in school, and I didn't understand why, but now I do. It's because they are basically training you to be obedient, and they're not training you to be learn to be educated. Means obedient.
I think I think that there exists more children than not who share that same feeling that you had. It's just the resistance to the effort put into making that child obedient to the ways of the system is kind of they give up on the resistance to it because of the bombardment from every adult figure in their life to just sit down and shut up and do what you're told and stop making me get out of work early so I can come pick you up at school because you've been misbehaving. Listen to your teachers, do the homework, do the classwork, do what everybody else wants you to do instead of the thing that you want to do, which is self-actualize and perform that process of becoming and actually being a human all the while. And that's what they do. And it's the belief in outside authority, which is drilled into these young people's heads that all the adults in the world have been trained themselves into thinking is okay. And it's not. It's not. People's authority is the only authority that they have is the one they have over themselves. And we're all responding to this great cycle of cause and effect that we have no control over. We don't have any control over that. The universe controls cause and effect. We don't. We're just hoping that we don't cause a bad effect.
Well, people see all these stories of, okay, people getting hurt or robbed or stolen from, or these times where there were gangs that were extorting people on the streets and or places where that's still going on. These fears kind of push folks to wanting to say, well, what would we do without these structures of control? You know, if it wasn't for school, kids would be out there in gangs, you know, running the streets, right? And drugs, dealing drugs, which actually are brought in usually by government agencies, but they don't want to talk about that, of course. But yeah, these fears drive this, right?
Sorry.
This concern why we need this obedience training because we're afraid of what would happen if we didn't, you know? That's what I think people have been kind of trained to think, or they're used to thinking, right?
Well,
we need this because they don't see the other options. But a good parent gives their kids options, uses creativity to stimulate a child to go in the direction you want them to go. If if you're creative camp counselor, you could always get your your kids to do what you want them to do without forcing them to do it and bending their arm every time. Whereas the, poor teachers just yell, do this, do that, go over there. Awesome teacher says, hey, you guys want to see something fun over here? Right? And all the kids come running, right? Because if you're doing something of your own free will and you say to the kids, hey, you guys want to volunteer for a fun experiment? The kids go, I do. I've done it before. You know what I mean? And I think the same is true of all of us. If we're doing something because we want to do it and we're interested, we learn better. We're curious. We want to know. But if someone says, you have to do this, now it's something I have to do, and I'm losing interest already.
Yeah. 2 points. One being, when the mob breaks your windows in your shop and then tells you if you pay them, they'll stop breaking the windows. There's a point that you were making that made me think of that. And then the second point that you're making that is making me think of just pretty much just saying that, like, there's probably a lot of really, really good people being teachers inside government schools. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of really good people, a lot of really good teachers, but they have to adhere to the rules of the system. And I don't know how much it's changed, because I'm a 37-year-old man, not a 7-year-old boy. And I don't go to public school, and neither do my kids. So I'm speaking from ignorance here of what it's like now. But I do follow along with the intended purpose of the system of public school, and it doesn't change. So it's really that system that I attack, and that I'm on the defense from. They should go away, and the good teachers should be able to be even better than good. They should be able to be great. They should be able to be fantastic, awesome, and to be able to really come into their own as teachers and be a good influence on these young people's lives. Because you know what, like, mom and dad, you're going to teach your kids as much as you can, but there's some lessons that you should learn from some other person, some other teacher out there, like a Mr. Miyagi type, like, you know what I mean? Or so, or like, Obi-Wan comes in and helps you learn, you know what I mean? It's not a family member. Anyways.
No, I think there's certain ages, especially with kids, where it's natural to separate from your natural parents. And I think it makes sense if you think about a more communal environment, the way most humans have lived through most of history. There's been some sort of group that lives together for survival purposes. It would be natural for all the kids, once they start getting closer to teenagers, to all kind of go run together, and they would congregate probably with maybe some of the elders of the group would be with the youngest kids, and maybe the sort of 30s age, that already know how to do jobs would start kind of mentoring the 12 and 13-year-olds, and they would want to go hang out with their aunties and uncles type of people, not their mom and dad, because they've been with mom and dad since they were little, right? And I think that would be natural. And if you had somewhat of a multi-generational communal system, that would just fall right into a natural flow. But that's been corrupted by modern influences like the New World Order's agendas, which intend to bust up that type of situation and make sure that type of thing doesn't exist,
That reminds me of the point that you were making about why I mentioned the mobsters breaking the glass. They're creating dependency as well. And, and through their threats, they're selling you back the security against their own threats. Like, it's a really, really, really twisted and immoral system. It really needs to be pointed at, and we need to start laughing at them, really. But in order to do that, like what you're saying about, like multi-generational families living together and aunts and uncles and, communities kind of coming around, like, that's where the real strength is. That's where the real, like, no thank you please type of strength is. We don't need your services because we got each other, and that's, I guess, the moral of the story of what we're trying to talk about here. it's kind of culminated into this beautiful message, which I know is near and dear to your heart, like community creation and inspiring people to, be good to one another. And I've
Yeah,
always,
and talk about evil, right? Like that was
yeah,
every guest I've ever had on my show. I'm like, what does evil mean to you? When I use that word, what do you think of? What do you mean by that? Because we're not all going to have to use the same exact words for everything. And for a lot of people that come from a certain cultural background, certain words are going to trigger their mind to think a certain way. So it's not going to work good for them to use that word to describe maybe the same thing that we're describing with that word. It's just because our world has been so smashed together and so many people have been thrown together through wars, conflicts, purposefully driving people from one country to another, has created this situation where it's really hard to find any kind of objective summary of anything, much less morality. But trying to communicate with people is tricky. So, but like evil, what's wrong, right? What is right? We got to start with that stuff. And so, one thing I have come to realize is, way back when we did the second funnel conference was a presentation I did about humanity's most powerful weapon, being our ability to work together. And like, if we were to witness true change in the world, you would see some teamwork. That would have to be part of the equation, right? It's going to take more than a couple people to turn this tide, right? Well, that was kind of when we formed the One Great Work Warriors, and we've been going strong, ever since, making episodes talking about freedom. And but one thing I've realized, I've been part of multiple mastermind groups, and some kind of like freedom cells that Derek Burroughs' platform was inspiring. I've done some things like that several times, and I've seen some groups go bad. I've seen some groups not bad, but fall apart for various reasons, not reach objectives that we would have hoped for. And if a group does not, even a group of two, in terms of a relationship, does not firmly agree on foundational principles in the beginning, in terms of what do we believe in, what do we believe right and wrong is, what's evil, what's good, we're on the same page with that, and what's our principles, that we're adhering to the same principles and we see the same objective truths in the world, then we can operate as a team from there. However, if people don't take the time to do that, and create some kind of mission and goal, I guarantee a group's going to have problems, and it's not going to flourish, and it's not going to last the test of time, because those things have to be foundational. Just like building the house, you got to start with the foundation. So,
yeah, too true, my dude, too true. All right. So as we wrap it up here, is there any closing remarks that you want to give to the people?
man, I just want to tell people, check more of what James Cordner's got going here, Voluntaryist Academy, and express yourself. I think every person needs to find a way within their own heart, soul, mind, and conscience to express this frustration of freedom, of lack of freedom in the world, of the problems you've been seeing. Part of the solution is recognizing the problem. You think of an alcoholic, has to admit, we have to admit that we've been in slavery in order to start working towards freedom and ever work together. So I just hope people each take that seriously in their own life.
Well, I agree with you. Identifying the problem is definitely the first and most necessary step in order to move forward into the future and create change in the world for a better future. It's not always about us, and it's not always about the present moment, even though we got to know what we're doing now to know which direction it's going to send us in, and to prepare ourselves for that inevitable future is pretty important. And because you know what, we're going to have an effect on this place, and it's going to happen whether you like it or not. When you throw that stone into that pond, those ripples happen. They sure do, and they eventually they fade away, but it has an effect on its environment. You change the environment by doing that action. It's about what you want to see as the outcome, because one day we will leave this place, and we will leave future generations to inherit what we leave behind. the problems we create have to be theirs to solve. And what's fair, what kind of situation is fair to leave them in? The idea, as Hyacinth Boyson so brilliantly said a couple hundred years ago, is to plant seeds for trees under which we will not sit, for shade under which we will not sit. Excuse me. I can never get that one right. One of these days I might do it. So it's really important, in my opinion, to understand the machinations of evil and the tyrants behind the evildoers, and in your own special individual way, in every part of your life where you are comfortable with saying no, thank you, please. It is time now, more than ever, to start stepping up and saying no, thank you to those who seek to make you their slaves. If not for you, do it for the children of your, if you don't have children, do it for the sole purpose that one day you'll be on your deathbed. And wouldn't it be much better to look at your past and say to yourself, I did everything in my power to make sure this place was going to be a little bit better when I left? Because you know what? The truth is, and like I always say every week when I'm signing off, that you own yourself, period. No one else owns you, and you don't own anyone else. You know, and that is so important, because it is the bedrock on which the foundation is built, where the rest of the structure can be bolted down to. All these principles, all this morality, everything, it all comes back down to self-ownership and being responsible for what you put out into the universe and the actions that you take. And with that, I'll leave you guys. Maybe I come back in a live stream, maybe not, but in case I don't, the last thing I want to remind everybody about out there is, you know, taxation is not just theft. Okay, I know this is kind of a cliche trope, kind of bumper sticker thing. Taxation is slavery. When it comes right down to it, taxation is slavery. It's, you're funding the tyrants, and you're bowing down and kind of recognizing their power when you pay taxes. And the reason why it's slavery is because whenever one group of people can gather around and decide how much of the thing you earn in your life with the work that you do to better your life and your situation for you or your family and those that you care about or those around you, how much of that you get to keep and how much you're forced to give to them. It means you're a slave. That means they got you. And that is probably the best first place to start saying, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So anyways, guys, I want to say one last thank you to Chris Jantzen for coming here. And you can check out his work, his
YouTube.
Yeah, his past catalog of work on YouTube, the End Evil podcast.
Yeah,
I think it's on Chris Jantzen. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Evil. Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes and everything for everybody. And yeah, go over and check out voluntaryistacademy.com and maybe consider signing up for the newsletter in case the YouTube channel ever gets nuked. You'll have a way to stay in contact with me, or in case I ever go on a break and you want to hear what's going on, I'll keep everybody informed, and I'll send you funny memes and PDF books and articles and whatever. And so anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in. I'm James Gordiner, and you were just watching Voluntaryist Academy. Peace.
No masters, no slaves, no rulers, no state, no taxes, no cage. To see it is to leave it.